as we go, but that's okay. I just want to welcome everyone to our ministry meetup. We used to do a big event as EDA with a lot of people in one room, but obviously with COVID, we can't do that anymore. So we've switched to this format, and AUMA is partnered with us to provide these sessions. So a big thank you to AUMA. I'll just do a bit of an overview of our agenda. Today, we're talking about natural resources, energy, natural gas, and electricity. So we'll hear from Sabrina with AUMA first, and then we'll move into our presenters. Gitane de Silva is CEO of Canada Energy Regulator. Then we'll hear from Drew Leyburne, ADM of Energy Technology Sector with Natural Resources Canada. And then finally, we'll hear from Stephanie Clarke, the ADM of Natural Gas and Electricity in Alberta. So I'll hand it over to you, Sabrina, to say a few words from AUMA.
Awesome. Thank you, Ben. I just wanted to say good afternoon and welcome again to today's session. My name is Sabrina Feula, and I'm the Director of Client Development with AUMA, and I'm delighted to bring greetings on behalf of the organization today on the session on natural resources, energy, natural gas, and electricity. The AUMA Energy Retail program provides outstanding value through aggregation and expert advice. And as part of our most recent aggregation, we were able to lock in rates 10% lower than the market for the next 3 years for our members. AUMA also partners with rural municipalities of Alberta and the government of Alberta to operate the Municipal Climate Change Action Centre, where we provide grants and funding to municipalities. And finally, AUMA will be hosting its Spring Municipal Leaders Caucus virtually from April 14th to the 16th. So please check out our website if you would like to register. And with that being said, I'm happy to turn the discussion over to our wonderful group of participants to get into today's topic of natural resources, energy, natural gas, and electricity. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Sabrina. So now I'll turn it over to Gitane. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. De Silva, the CEO of Canada Energy Regulator.
Well, thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. It's nice to see some familiar names on the screen there. For those who don't know me, my name is Gitane de Silva. I'm currently the CEO of the Canada Energy Regulator. I previously served as Alberta's representative in Washington, as well as the Deputy Minister for the province for international and intergovernmental relations. And before that, spent about 15 years in the Foreign Service as a Canada-US expert. So it's great to be back with EDA. The last time I was with you all was at a meeting in Banff a couple of years ago, and it's great to be back again. And I hope that we can get back to Banff sometime soon too. So it is an honor to be here on behalf of the Canada Energy Regulator. Bonjour tout le monde. C'est un honneur d'être ici parmi vous virtuellement au nom de la Régie de l'Énergie du Canada. I've been in this role for about 7 months now and having lots of fun, no shortage of issues to tackle. I want to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you from the traditional territories of the people of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta, which includes the Blackfoot Confederacy comprising the Siksika, Piikani, and Kainai First Nations. Treaty 7 also includes the Tsuut'ina First Nation, the Stoney Nakoda, Bearspaw, and Wesley First Nations, and the city of Calgary is also home to Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3. Thank you for joining us from wherever you are. I would like to honor each of your traditional territories as we come together from across the province. So the CER, formerly known as the NEB, regulates infrastructure to ensure the safe and efficient delivery of energy to Canada and the world. We do so while keeping people safe and putting safety first at all times, protecting the environment, recognizing and respecting the rights of the Indigenous peoples of Canada, and providing timely and relevant energy information and analysis. Today, I'd like to bring some perspectives on the future of Canadian energy and what you can expect from the CER in the years ahead. Our roadmap comes directly from the legislation that established the CER, the Canadian Energy Regulator Act. A critical component of the new CER is our new governance structure. So as CEO, I'm responsible for the day-to-day operations of the CER. Our board of directors sets the strategic direction for the organization, and we also have a commission that is responsible for energy adjudication and operates independently in fulfilling this function. I want to share with you in my role as CEO where the CER is headed and how we'll get there. But first, I'd like to touch on the CER's latest energy publication, which will also be a useful tool for economic developers focusing on the shift to renewables in Canada. Decarbonizing electricity and electrifying end-use energy are two key components in Canada's transition to a sustainable low-carbon energy future. Canada's Renewable Power, Recent and Near-Term Developments is a report that examines this first component. The report looks at many projects currently under development to explore a short-term outlook for planned capacity changes in each province and territory projected out to 2023. Notably, the report shows that Alberta and Saskatchewan will lead the country's growth in renewable energy capacity over the next 3 years. Electricity generation from renewable sources is expected to continue increasing as demand for electricity grows and the country continues its transition to a lower carbon economy. Informing the energy conversation by providing relevant, accurate, and accessible energy information is one of the core responsibilities of the CER. If you haven't already, I invite you to check out the renewables report on our website. It features a series of interactive visuals where you can look province by province at the diversity of renewable energy sources and electricity options across Canada. Now, to that roadmap I spoke of. I know that the public debate on pipelines in Canada is sometimes complicated, and an effective regulator needs a roadmap that lays out what Canadians can expect in the coming years. The roadmap also helps us to hold us accountable as an organization. We have identified 4 strategic priorities that focus the future of the work of the CER. These are trust and confidence, reconciliation, data and digital innovation, and competitiveness. A regulator needs to be trusted in order to truly serve Canadians. Reliable and timely data is critical to sound decision-making for our internal experts and how we can better inform the public on Canada's energy system. I'd like to speak a bit more in depth about the 2 priorities that most directly focus on strengthening the future of Canadian energy. First of all, the CER Act states that the regulator will operate in such a way that Canada's global competitiveness will be enhanced. This is particularly urgent in 2021 as the entire energy industry has been facing strong headwinds from a combination of the pandemic and the OPEC plus price war that upended energy markets last spring. As we look towards the future, we know that the companies that are going to thrive are those with the ability to innovate and adapt to the global transition to the low carbon economy. Industry must rise to high standards in safety, environmental protection, and Indigenous involvement with their business and their facilities throughout their life cycle. As a regulator, the CER must set the highest standards, working to enhance Canada's global competitiveness by making decisions in a predictable and timely way and working to provide certainty to investors and stakeholders. We are also engaging in conversations with stakeholders about the role of the regulator in the economic recovery and in ESG. The more regulatory certainty we can provide, the more Canada's competitiveness will be enhanced by attracting global capital and enabling the efficient trade of energy. The second priority I'll speak to is reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. The CER Act clearly states that the government is committed to achieving reconciliation with First Nations, the Métis and Inuit. And today, the CER is transforming the way it works with Indigenous peoples with a commitment to implementing the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. We are doing this by enhancing the involvement of Indigenous peoples in how we discharge our mandate, recognizing their unique cultures, knowledge, and histories, building new relationships based on the recognition of rights and respect, and driving meaningful change in the CER's requirements and expectations of regulated industry. And I'm very proud that for the first time ever, Canada's National Energy Regulator has an Indigenous Advisory Committee representing diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis interests. This committee provides strategic advice to our board on how the CER can better build relationship with Indigenous peoples and incorporate Indigenous perspectives into our work. I'm very proud of this work. It is progress and a very positive step in our journey towards reconciliation. Reconciliation matters because it is long past due. It is not just respectful and meaningful relationships. Reconciliation is also economic reconciliation, real participation in the projects themselves, including monitoring and oversight. The CER has a clear path forward on what industry, Indigenous peoples, those who live and work near pipelines, and all Canadians can expect from us in the years ahead, and to which we will hold ourselves accountable. Public institutions are rightfully expected to evolve to meet the changing needs. The CER is being transformed to be a modern, more effective regulator that continues to keep safety at the core of its mandate, while earning the trust of Canadians, fostering sustainability, building strong relationships with First Nations, the Métis and Inuit, and enhancing Canada's global competitiveness. I look forward to the questions and conversations. Thank you, and back to you, Ben.
Thanks, Gitane. And yeah, I did forget to mention that there will be time for question and answers at the end. Also, if anyone has a question during any of the presentations, feel free to type it in chat and we'll get to it when we get to that section. But yeah, now I will turn it over to Drew Leyburne, the ADM with Energy Technology Sector of Natural Resources Canada. Take it away, Drew.
Great. Thanks very much, Ben. And thanks for this chance to get to know each other a little bit better. I'll just start by saying that I'm speaking to you from the traditional territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. And I'm here representing the Federal Department of Natural Resources, or NRCan, as we call ourselves. So we're Within the federal system, the energy, mining, forestry, geology, mapping, and earth observation department. For today, I'll be focusing on energy, oil and gas, electricity, and other fuels. And we recognize, of course, that in that space, in energy, it's primarily provincial jurisdiction. Issues like land tenure and other things are the domain of the province. But we play in areas that complement that work in places like international relations, interprovincial infrastructure, science and technology, and really do try to work with the provinces and territories to make sure we're working together closely. We, within the department, have a really broad suite of programs that touch on energy production, on energy transportation, and on energy use. And in my specific role, I'm responsible for energy technology and finding cleaner and cheaper energy solutions. So we work with provinces, we work with municipalities, with universities, big and small companies, and with other countries. And we also have a series of NRCan labs doing energy R&D, including one in Devon, just outside of Edmonton. But generally speaking, I'm part of the team that is working to try and future-proof the energy sector across the country. So in your province, we work most closely with Alberta Energy, with Alberta Innovates, and Emissions Reduction Alberta. And within the federal family here in Ottawa, we work most closely with Environment Canada and ICE at the Industry Department. And of course, we work hand in glove with Gitane's team at the Canada Energy Regulator, particularly on major projects like pipelines and interties and things like that. So I thought I would just take a couple minutes to talk about a few of the recent federal programs that we've had that have a direct and specific linkage to Alberta's energy sector. So for now, I'm not going to touch on the economy-wide supports that were put in place last year in the wake of COVID, but really just focus on those energy pieces. So on the petroleum side, specifically, the biggest item from last year that I'm sure you know about was the $1.5 billion federal investment in orphan and inactive well remediation. This is administered by the Western provinces, and in Alberta's case, the Alberta Orphan Well Association. 1 billion of that 1.7 will go to Alberta, where it's expected to create over 5,200 jobs. The other big announcement of last year was our $675 million investment in an emissions reduction fund, ERF. It's directed at upstream and midstream oil and gas companies to lower or eliminate the routine venting of methane-rich gas from conventional, tight, and shale oil or gas operations. It offers repayable and partially repayable contributions. And we just finished the second intake process, intake period, and we're just working through those applications now. The third big investment last year in the oil and gas space was the $100 million for CRIN from the Strategic Innovation Fund. As many of you know, CRIN is the Clean Resource Innovation Network, representing many of the players in the oil and gas space. And its funding will be used to accelerate the development and use of technologies to lower that industry's environmental impacts. And at least half of that funding, of that 100 million, will go to small and medium-sized enterprises. In December, I'm sure you also saw the federal government released its Strength and Climate Plan. It had dozens and dozens of measures, but I'll focus on the ones that had a particularly strong energy connection. The biggest is probably the $1.5 billion Clean Fuels Fund, which will support the production and use of low-carbon fuels such as hydrogen, renewable natural gas, cellulosic ethanol, biocrude, and clean diesel. It'll be closely linked to the recent hydrogen strategy for Canada, which was developed in close collaboration with Alberta. And the climate plan also announced that we'd be developing a comprehensive CCUS strategy, so for carbon capture, use, and sequestration. These pieces will all come together when you're talking about the creation of something like blue hydrogen, which uses CCUS in its production. And again, this is an area where we're working very closely with Alberta. In fact, our ministers announced just last month that we'd be establishing a Canada-Alberta steering group for CCUS. On the electricity side, the climate plan also announced an additional $964 million to advance smart renewable energy and grid modernization projects across the country. It'll invest an additional $300 million across the country to help those rural, remote, and Indigenous communities that currently rely on diesel in order to help them find alternatives. On the vehicle side, which definitely has an energy connection, the Incentives for Zero Emission Vehicles, or IZEV program, was extended to continue the provision of rebates of up to $5,000 on light-duty zero-emission vehicles. And on a related note, we're also investing an additional $150 million in charging and refueling stations across the country. And while it's not specific to energy, I thought I would also mention the government announced a $3 billion net zero accelerator fund to support industrial decarbonization for all kinds of heavy emitters, which would of course include the energy sector in a lot of places. The climate plan, and this is maybe of a particular interest to municipalities, the climate plan also put a major focus on energy efficiency, so the end use side of the energy equation. And some of those highlights include $1.5 billion for green and inclusive community buildings, $2.6 billion to help homeowners make their homes more energy efficient through retrofit. This includes grants of up to $5,000 and free EnerGuide assessments to see what your baseline is. There was a $2 billion announcement for financing commercial and large-scale building retrofits. And we're going to be conducting for the first time ever a national infrastructure assessment to help identify the needs and priorities in the built environment and undertake long-term planning towards a net zero emissions future. So that's a long list, and I didn't want to be too listy, but there was no avoiding it given all the announcements of the last year or so. And I thought it was worth running through it just to give you a sense of what we're currently working on at NRCan and across the energy world. So I'll pause it there and let the next speakers go, and then look forward to your questions in the Q&A.
Great, thank you very much, Drew. I will now turn it over to Stephanie Clarke, Associate Deputy Minister, Natural Gas and Electricity here in the province of Alberta.
Thanks, Ben, and hello, everyone. Thank you very much for the opportunity to participate here today. As Ben indicated, I am the Associate Deputy Minister of Natural Gas and Electricity here in Alberta, very newly appointed. So very pleased that I've been able to join you today, barely 2 months into my role. So happy to address questions that you have, but also very happy to take any suggestions or comments you might have as well as I settle into my new role. I had a couple of slides here to structure the conversation that I'm going to try to share and hope that it works. I've had varying degrees of luck, I think, in doing this. So can folks give me a thumbs up that you can see this? Awesome. Okay, great. Yeah, okay, good. All right. So I just wanted to start perhaps by highlighting the important role that the natural gas industry plays within both our energy sector and, of course, in our provincial economy, and will continue to play with regard to economic recovery here in Alberta. Our energy sector recovery strategy really is very much focused on creating new jobs, getting folks back to work, building infrastructure, and of course, diversifying our economy moving forward. And we've really focused our efforts on 3 primary pillars, if you will. Supporting our conventional energy industry, which of course has brought strength to the province for many years in the past and will continue to do so moving forward. Extending hydrocarbon value chains so that we maximize the value of our resources and get that value add, and of course, proactively identifying other opportunities, recognizing that it is absolutely critical that we diversify our energy portfolio and in turn, our provincial economy as well. So the natural gas sector obviously plays a key role in all of these respects. We certainly have a rich supply of cost-effective natural gas and natural gas liquids in the province that affords us many opportunities and affords many opportunities for companies to really invest across the value chain here in Alberta, and while at the same time supporting our energy industry. And while we don't always talk about the electricity sector in a similar vein, it very much has a role to play in these respects as well, recognizing that it will provide that reliable, flexible system for us to power our economy as we move forward. So I wanted to focus a lot of my comments here this morning on the natural gas vision and strategy that we released as a province this past October of 2020. And it was really the culmination of an extensive conversation that we had with a variety of stakeholders and individuals across the province and abroad. And we believe strongly that by having a clear vision and really setting out some deliberate actions, we can attract the investment into our province. And so, as you see on the slide here, the vision is really to become a preferred source of clean, secure, and responsibly sourced natural gas, supplying both the domestic and global demand for energy, and of course, a range of projects across the value chain. And we focused our actions on a suite of different pathways, which again builds upon the existing strengths that we have here in the province, everything from the industrial clusters that we already have in the industrial heartland, as an example, and across the province, the infrastructure that we have for natural gas distribution, obviously the skill sets and the workforce that we have here in Alberta, and of course that abundance of low-cost natural gas. So we have a number of strengths that we want to build off of in pursuing these pathways. Beyond that, though, we very much want to look for new emerging energy systems, and there was references made to that already today in areas that hold the potential for significant growth in our province. And so we focused on expanding existing value chains like petrochemical manufacturing and Alberta's industrial demand, and looking towards some of those newer pathways like liquefied natural gas, plastics recycling, and hydrogen. And even though the strategy itself has been rolled out not that long ago, we've already started to make progress in all of these respects, which I'll touch on shortly here. So starting first with petrochemicals, as many of you know, Canada is home to large hydrocarbon processing regions. We certainly are one of them in Canada. And of course, we have well-established and potential petrochemical manufacturing centers in places like the Industrial Heartland, Grand Prairie, Joffrey, and Medicine Hat. We very much, as a goal, want to be a top 10 producer when it comes to petrochemicals, while still diversifying, again, our current portfolio of products that are manufactured. And one of the ways that we are setting out to do that is through the Alberta Petrochemical Incentive Program, APIP, as we call it. APIP was really designed to incent and offer greater certainty to investors interested in our province, using what we believe is administratively market-based program that provides financial support for capital costs, which is, of course, the largest cost that many of these developers are tackling. APIP provides all the projects that meet our eligibility criteria set out in our APIP program will be approved for funding that is provided once it is built and operational. So essentially, investors can count on 12% of total capital costs once it is up and running in the form of a grant, which we think is quite a significant incentive to attract folks to our province, and will hopefully help us to achieve that goal of being a top 10 producer of petrochemicals, and certainly to compete with some of the petrochemical hubs and areas in the United States, like in Texas and Louisiana. We're very hopeful that this obviously will also fulfill those goals of ours of creating jobs in our province. And of course, those jobs would be directly associated with the facilities themselves, but also indirect jobs as well that we get in the construction sector, in the support services, and of course, the role that this can play in terms of downstream opportunities as well. So we're quite excited about the Petrochemical Incentive Program and about the future of petrochemicals here in our province. Second area I wanted to highlight here today is hydrogen, another area that is becoming quite an area of excitement. And again, that was referenced in the previous comments here as well. This is one of our newer value chains, and it's not that difficult to really highlight the value proposition for hydrogen here in Alberta. It certainly stands to benefit our province, both from an economic and environmental standpoint. And again, we think we are already in a very unique position in terms of the advantages and strengths that we can bring from a hydrogen development perspective. And we've heard, as we've been out talking to folks, that now is really the time to determine what our approach is relative to hydrogen, and really start to look at how we can attract investment in this regard. Many countries around the world are developing their own hydrogen strategies. it was already referenced, the federal government's hydrogen strategy, which we provided input to as well, and was pleased to see moved out just recently. We too are working on our hydrogen roadmap, which we hope to roll out in the coming months. And it very much is based on a significant amount of input and collaboration that we received over a more than 4-month process that we're just on the heels of right now of engagement. We've talked to folks from our industry partners, to researchers, to environmental groups, municipal and Indigenous organizations, all of which have given us quite a significant amount of value, and we appreciate all the time folks have put into our conversation around hydrogen. So we know that as we move forward, we'll continue to need to rely on that collaboration and that input. And so we look forward to working with EDA and others on that. And we'll say stay tuned in terms of the hydrogen roadmap over the next little while. Finally, in terms of the natural gas strategy, wanted to highlight as well a couple of other areas of focus for us. Certainly, LNG markets offer a significant potential for economic development, leveraging the Western Canadian natural gas resources to advance LNG projects here in Alberta and elsewhere. We also see this as a critical driver to getting that key market access for Western Canadian gas as well. So very much a key focal point in that regard. We have many advantages, once again, here in Canada relative to LNG. Certainly, as I mentioned, low cost natural gas, shorter distances to market, fairly mature infrastructure, lower operating costs, and of course, that workforce that is so skilled and experienced that we can bring to the fold. So we're quite excited about what the future holds in terms of LNG. Plastic circular economy is another area of focus. We certainly have appreciated the calls to do more in terms of the circular economy for plastics, and we think this is an area where Alberta can provide leadership as well. In our natural gas strategy, we have a fairly ambitious goal to become the Western North American Center of Excellence for Plastic Diversion and Recycling, and so that is a key area of focus for us, working, of course, with Alberta Environment and Parks to do that. So we want to make sure that plastics are recycled multiple times throughout their lifespan and produced into valuable products. And we believe, again, that we have a leadership role to play in that regard, and that too can stimulate economic growth and jobs in our province. So turning now briefly to the electricity market, which, as you can imagine, being a couple of months into this role is quite a learning curve in dealing with Alberta's electricity system. We believe that we take a very practical approach to the management of our electrical system. By way of background, as a reminder, we have an energy-only market here in Alberta. So essentially, generators are paid only for the electricity that they produce in real time when it's required. This is different than the capacity market, in which generators are paid for their ability to produce electricity as well as for the electricity they produce and sell in real time. There were efforts a number of years ago to consider moving towards a capacity market in Alberta, but that decision was reversed back in 2019. So our focus has been on promoting this energy-only market ever since, with significant support, I will say, from our electricity stakeholders. Alberta's energy-only system is quite unique within Canada, and we believe it's actually helped to spur the adoption of new technologies and innovation based on what the market can support without additional government subsidies. It allows companies to really strike agreements for power and unparalleled degree of flexibility, which again, we believe is helping us to reduce emissions and stimulating and encouraging investment in renewable technology as well. Speaking of renewables, and Gitane alluded to the report recently from the CER. As the CER has indicated, and as we've seen, Saskatchewan and Alberta is expected to lead Canada in terms of renewable energy growth in the foreseeable future, which is quite exciting. Since 2019, in fact, because since we've had the affirmation, I guess, of the energy-only market, we've seen over $5 billion in investment announced for generation projects. which includes $2 billion announced for utility scale renewable projects. And that really doesn't include the investments related to our coal to gas transition. As some of you will know, we're on track to achieve these conversions well ahead of schedule by 2023, ahead of the date that was set in terms of 2030. So again, we do believe that the energy-only system that we have in place has actually served us well to stimulate these types of market-based decisions and renewables in the province, and we look forward to being that center of growth as we move forward as well. And then finally, I did want to talk on another key area of focus for us, and that is ESG, and certainly something that will be familiar to many of you right now. We are adapting and meeting the market demands for lower carbon energy, as was referenced, and we recognize that we need to demonstrate those high standards that we have in terms of environmental performance, human rights, and labor standards as well, and think that because we have that here in Alberta and Canada, we are a very logical choice for meeting post-pandemic energy demands. So we're very focused on continuing our efforts in that regard, while at the same time looking for ways to better tell our story abroad about just what we're doing in that regard, both here in Alberta, in Canada. And so looking at ESG continues to remain a priority for us here in the province. So I'll wrap up my comments there and give us plenty of time for discussion. But again, I want to thank you very much for the opportunity to join today. I hope that if there are additional conversations to be had following today's discussion, which there always is, and I appreciate those opportunities, that you will reach out to the government, either ourselves in Alberta Energy, as well as Invest Alberta or JEI as well. We look forward to having those conversations in terms of those opportunities. And as I mentioned, please stay tuned for more to come in terms of our roadmap for hydrogen, LNG, and our efforts relative to the plastic circular economy.